Welcome to another episode of the Rice Project podcast. My name is Ingi Vivill and I'm your host. And on this episode we interview foreign business owners that either live in Iceland or have strong affiliations with Iceland and that have decided to start a business here in Iceland, and we hear their stories. And with us here today we have Adrian Walder. Welcome, Adrian.
Thank you.
So when we talked together on Facebook, you told me about your project, the Birch Tree Yurt Cabin. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing this right.
Yep, that's fine.
Close enough,
yep,
at least.
Close enough.
And you have a background, like a strong background within forestry and what is the word again? Like you're cutting trees. You said a tree surgeon, right?
A tree surgeon. That's what in England it's called, a tree surgeon.
Yeah.
Or an arborist.
An arborist, yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
And I'm a gardener now, and so I have an affiliation with nature.
Definitely. That. But could you tell us a bit about your project, the Birch Tree Yurt Cabin? Because you told me you recently started a Carolina Fund.
That's right. It went live on Thursday.
Yeah.
I needed to crowdfund it because I'm not a rich person, and you know, it seemed a viable method to find the funding to start it. Basically what it is an environmentally focused project in the north of Iceland.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of locations sorted. Nothing's definite yet for the land, but I have two options.
Yeah.
And yeah, what it will be, originally I started about 2 years ago with the idea of traditional Mongolian yurts. And then decided with the Icelandic weather that I need to move away from that idea, and decided on the circular yurt cabins made of wood. And I found a place to manufacture those. And
so just for the listeners who aren't aren't very familiar with the terms here, a yurt cabin. Could do tell me more.
I think it's something I may have invented.
Very good. That's true entrepreneurship.
Because you have the Mongolian yurt, the circular building.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make that a more permanent structure that would withstand the Icelandic weather, especially in winter with the winds and the snow. But I didn't want a traditional box cabin for people to stay in, so I wanted something slightly more interesting. So I've come up with the idea of the circular cabin.
Okay. Yeah.
Which combines best of both worlds, really.
Okay. How so? Like, what are I can imagine that like in terms of structural integrity and like the firmness of the building or something, like the circular shape would be a very desirable outcome. But I mean, I'm pretty sure that there's no hiding in the corners, for example.
No. It's going to be interesting if it happens. Yeah. I mean, designing the interiors will be challenging, I think. But I think the uniqueness of the building will be interesting.
Yeah.
Because it kind of harks back to very old times, like pre-medieval times of roundhouses, and I want a turf roof on it, so it blends into the landscape. So it kind of looks like a historic building.
Yeah.
But once you're inside, it's modern and clean.
I think that's a really interesting angle, because like also with the like in terms of using turf on the roof, that has what I'm told, these have really strong insulating qualities, but also like, because I mean you have your with your background in forestry and within the nature sciences, or what can I say, this is a type of structure that is in its nature not invasive in nature. You catch where I'm going. Like,
yeah.
it seeks to adapt to its natural environment through the materials.
I didn't want to come over here and plonk it's an English word. I didn't want to put something in a landscape that didn't fit.
Yeah.
I wanted something to, over the years just to blend.
Mm-hmm.
You can drive around Iceland and you'll see square boxes and, the fancy summer houses with lots of glass and, the tourist hotels. I wanted something slightly less intrusive. Mm. It's not about making a statement. It's about the bones of the project. I want the building to be environmentally friendly, wood and turf and natural, because it's going to be a vessel to raise money to plant trees. I don't want to make money from the project. Mm-hmm. And that's why all my profits will be going to environmental work in Iceland. Mm-hmm. So I wanted a building to reflect the ethos of what I'm trying to achieve. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think that's it's like a leitmotif of from my experience, strong entrepreneurial projects that, I mean, they are not led by the idea of profits. They are led by an altruistic motive.
Yeah,
in a sense. It's be it helping or improving or healing or what it is. It
started off very differently. It started off as just a crazy dream. I was trying to figure out a way to come to Iceland, and then over the years realizing that if I wanted to come here, I needed to put something back for my own personal views. I couldn't just come over here and take. I wanted to, and it's developed into the altruistic project of not wanting to, make myself rich, but I wanted to give something back to a country that's given me a lot over the past few years. It's been a place I come to find myself.
I'm really happy to hear that, and it's like it's funny on these episodes that I very often assume this Icelandic ambassadorial role, because I'm always talking to foreigners in a sense, but I'm really happy to hear when people find that there's something about Iceland that strikes a chord with them, that they resonate with. There's something about, because there are many things in our society that where it for some reason has taken the guest's eye, or the guest's or the eye of someone coming from the outside, to truly appreciate these things. I mean, we blend in with them in a sense,
I think initially as a tourist here, it's very easy to get drawn into Iceland as a holiday destination, especially with the social media view of it, and the Instagrammable pictures of the Blue Lagoon, etc. It's very easy to fall in love with, but to actually find the country beyond what you see is, I think it's quite important for people who come here, especially if you want to live here. I think you need to find the real country.
Yeah, I think you're right, because the image we see on social media, it's heavily edited image. I mean, in essence, it's not even very human. No. It is a very portrayed theatrical image of it, and I think Iceland is in a very dire need of people like you that are willing to do the effort of showing people what are the naturalities of it. How is it natural? Because I think through the social media portrayal, we get this blurred, skewed, hyper-realistic, everything is in 4K and 6K, when reality is just right above 180p or something.
I spent 2 days on the south coast, and I stopped off at the big tourist spots, like Reynisfjörður and Gullfoss. there's just hordes and hordes of people.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was coming back. I like to deviate. If I see a road that looks interesting, I'll drive down it. And I ended up in a forest, and there was nobody there. And it was the most beautiful, serene place, next to a river and mountains. And I couldn't understand why nobody was there. And then I'd go to a waterfall, and there'd be hundreds of people. You know, quick photo on the bus.
On the bus again.
Off you go. And I want to attract people coming here for a different reason. I don't want them to necessarily do the tourist things. I want them to actually feel like they've come here and contributed something to the country and actually left something behind. Which is why when you stay at the yurts and the cabins, that every night you stay, you know, a tree will be planted for you.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that concept, which I thought was really interesting. It's one tree planted, right?
Yeah, I've teamed up with a global NGO.
Okay.
Called One Tree Planted.
Yeah.
And
so One Tree Planted is a global NGO.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I've been on the Carolina Fund project page. It'll detail some of the rewards. You know, however much you donate, you get certain benefits. And most of that is tree planting. I'm going to do it through this NGO because they will be able to send out an electronic certificate saying, you know, whoever donated has planted X amount of trees. So they have proof that they've done something. And if and when it's up and running and somebody stays, you know, a portion of their rental for the night will be sent to One Tree Planted. Okay,
so
but they plant in Iceland. They have two reforestation projects in Iceland.
Okay, that is so interesting. I think it is the first I don't know, tourist venture that I have heard of that actually takes an active initiative. It's where it's a part of the core project of contributing back.
Yep.
You know, and I think this is a very, very important dimension, because I know a lot of the problems with the tourist industry and a lot of the criticism it has gained has been focused towards how deductive of Iceland's resources it is, instead of, you know, replenishing those resources or, you know, adding to them.
It's difficult to know what money from the mass tourism is going back into the environment, and, you know.
Is there any way to trace it?
No, I don't think there is.
No.
Unless somebody actually shouts about it, which I want to do. You know, I'm not claiming to be in the mass tourism market, because it's going to be a small project, but I think what I want to achieve will be doing more than some of the big companies are. I won't name names.
No. I totally understand.
You know, there's large companies over here who heavily invest in the mass tourism market, but how much of that money is going back into Iceland? Into Icelandic environment, should I say?
Exactly, and I think it's a really I think it's an interesting, and it's also a very pressing question, you know, because we are Iceland is providing the tourism industry with very valuable and important, it provides the product essentially, if we are to speak of it in that terms. So I think it's very important for project to think, okay, when I'm taking out, I need to put in as well. So I think that's a really beautiful idea about behind the project here. But how's your I wanted to ask you a bit, how does you launched the Carolina Fund just recently? It was last Thursday, right?
It was the 1st of June.
1st of June,
so,
and we are recording on a Saturday, which is the 3rd of June. So how's it going so far? Like, what is your initial responses? How does it look?
I've had one donation.
Very good. That's better than nothing.
It's better than nothing. But I first tried it about a year ago. I was very naive. I had this grand dream of trying to raise tens of thousands of pounds, euros, krona, millions of krona, and just going, right, I'm going to build this dream. And then it kind of failed dramatically. And I spent the last year rethinking, and I'm going to launch it in stages. And this first stage, I'm looking for a lot smaller amount, and that's primarily to build the bones of the company, because there's certain things in place that are stopping me coming over here easily. So I'm having to build a business from the ground up, a company from the ground up, to allow me to come to Iceland to start this.
Yeah, we were talking about it here just earlier, that you have, to this day, probably the most unconventional connection to starting a business in Iceland. Because like in most of the episodes we have had, like, people who have moved here and hence started a business, be it because they haven't found a job or just they really enjoyed the passion. However, you have a very unconventional story, that because of the whole Brexit complications, you are not able to move to Iceland unless you start a business here.
That's one way, yeah.
I think probably the most accessible way as is. Or?
I think the easiest way is to marry an Icelander, but
exactly.
Apart from that, I think I've gone through the immigration sites and the government sites here, trying to find ways in, and I've kind of focused in on the special connection relationship to Iceland, and my thinking is, if I start a business here, and register it in Iceland and do all the relevant things to jump through all the all the hoops here, that I can then prove I have a special connection to the country, because I've deliberately started a company here, so I could be here.
And what I thought was very an important aspect of your project, that it is very focused on the Icelandic birch, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Which makes the whole project very centered around Iceland in a sense.
That's my thinking. I mean, birch is my favorite tree, and technically it's the only native tree species to Iceland. Yeah. Historically.
I had no idea of that.
But birch, it's the one that's considered native. Yeah. Although Iceland being Iceland and what it is as a country, there's it's hard to prove what was native here. Yeah. Before everybody cut it down. Yeah. But the idea of forestry here is it's mixed species as well. You can't just plant one species. You need to have a variety. So there will be fir trees and larch and willow and. But that's a long way off yet. I think initially it's getting the actual company started.
And I think it's a brilliant concept, and especially because, like we talked about it, it has this very strong dimension of giving back to the community, or not even community, giving back to nature, and that it so relies on this very old Icelandic native, in a sense. I think it's a beautiful project. And but what are your experiences of when you started this is the second time you have a go with this project? Yeah. Did you go the Carolina Fund way last time? Yes. Or another? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I say, I was just very naive. I had this dream, and I launched it thinking, I believe in my idea very strongly. And when you're passionate about something, you think everybody else should be, because I know it stands up to scrutiny. And I launched it thinking people are just going to throw money at me, and it'll be up and running. And
I can tell you already that rarely happens.
And it's it doesn't work like that in the real world. And this second time, I'm, like I said, going to do it in stages, and even this stage doesn't benefit me, because the money I raise, a portion of it will be for the associated business costs for registering companies, etc., etc. The rest will be to employ somebody. I want to employ somebody native to Iceland who can speak the language and can do the difficult work, filling out forms, opening accounts, registering a company. I could do it, but it's kind of beyond my language skills to negotiate some of the Icelandic language websites. So 3/4 of the money raised will be to employ somebody.
That's a very interesting thing. And like the funny thing with like a lot of the what can I say, like infrastructure when it comes to Icelandic companies, I hear this very often because I've interviewed people that are in the food industry, people that are starting restaurants and like food production initiatives and those kind of things, that there is a strong common thread of all the necessary information only being accessible in Icelandic, where I'm just like, what? Why? Do you guys only want kjötsúpa?
The sites are very vague as well. I mean, the immigration site is a prime example of it. An Icelandic government website that's very vague on information. And this is why I think having somebody here employed by the company to act as a branch manager, in essence, it means I can be back in England while they sort out
that's
the infrastructure of the company, basically. And they can also, once it's up and running, I want to apply for grants. I think there's grants available for forestry work, environmental grants here, which I have no access to in England. So if I get this small little nugget started over here, or it can grow from there, really.
But like, have you like in terms of the actual cabin, have you like? I'm just because I'm really interested about it. Have you a prototype or something, like either a mini one or a full size one or something?
On the project website, on Carolina Fund, there are computer generated images that I've come up with, actually showing the type of thing I'd like to build.
I saw it next to Skógafoss.
And some of the ideas of the interiors I'd like to achieve as well, because I want to go for a kind of rustic, Scandinavian feel on the inside. So head over to the website, the project page, and you'll see the vision in my head anyway.
Exactly. So we were talking about like the jumping hoops of part of like starting a business in Iceland, and like what in your experiences have been like the biggest hindrances, like where the biggest amount of red tape is? And
personally speaking, it's Brexit.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because pre-Brexit I could have come here and started it relatively easily. But the UK now being considered a third country, it's almost impossible. Almost. I've registered my company in England, and that's a legal entity in the UK now, purely so I could open a branch of that company in Iceland, which it seems to be the safest and easiest route for me. I couldn't even register the company as an entity here without having one in England, because I'd need to be resident in Iceland to do that. Whereas if I open a branch here, I don't have to be resident in Iceland to do it, but I will need an Icelandic branch manager.
And because of Brexit, it is very difficult to become a resident here.
Oh, I can't at all.
So basically, how I understand it, for British or English natives, starting a business here is virtually impossible, to an extent, without without marrying an Icelander or.
I think it's from what I can see, apart from the marriage thing, is you have to prove a special connection to the country, but they don't define what a special connection is.
That is a very, very interesting.
It's too vague. It's like, do you have a special connection to Iceland? I go, well, yes, I do, because I feel it here.
Yeah, it's a.
How do I prove this?
Yeah, it's a bordering on it's a spiritual connection, in a sense, and it's interesting in terms of like laws and legalities, because those are really rigid lines that you have to adhere to. I mean, it's either on and off, it's a yes or a no, and then to base it on this very vague question of, do you have a special connection? Yes, I love the country. I would consider that very special.
There are other ways. I think that there's lists of things. If there's labour shortages, or you have specialist knowledge, but even then the jobs over here have to be offered to Icelanders first, then to the European Union first, and if nobody filters its way down, and if nobody wants it, then they kind of sweep up the.
Yeah, it can be offered to a British citizen.
At the bottom of the pile.
This needs to change.
But the irony is, I think I could open a business here, a branch of my company here, if I had the money. If I was a rich person, I could do it, and I could filter all my income out of the country. And it seems a very negative loophole for me to exploit. I want my money to stay in Iceland. That's where it's going to do its best. But I think there's probably companies over here that do that. They open branches here, and all the money filters out of Iceland. That does nobody any good.
Yeah.
And
I agree to this point that, I mean, if you start a company in a country, it should not only be for its tax benefits. I mean, it should be because it is most beneficial for the project to grow in that place or in that country.
I think so. I think so. I don't think there's any tax benefits for me starting a company in Iceland. It's just the country I want to do. Yeah. I want to do this in, and I want it to be Icelandic. I want my money to stay here. I want, like you said earlier, to give as much back as possible. It may sound silly to people.
Well, I mean, I sometimes say, like, the older I get, the less I care whether people understand it or not.
Yeah, I think that's where I am in life.
And it's a damn good place to be.
Yeah.
Well, Adrian, it was a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you.
And to our viewers, check out the project Birch Tree Yurt Cabin on Carolina Fund. Donate, support it. That's the only way it's going to happen. You can follow. You can find other episodes of the Rice Project podcast here on our YouTube channel, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.